Welcome back to Empowerment Radio. It's all about lying, and it's all about finding the truth again. So before the break, I talked about how we lie to ourselves. And why do we do that? For example, lying to ourselves by calling ourselves name, putting ourselves down, making ourselves just appear less than others. This is again a self-defense mechanism, something that we have learned early in our lives. It's better to go under the radar. It's better to expect the worst, to know that the shoe gonna drop because at least we are prepared. It's better to look at the obstacles than at the opportunities, because at least we cannot get blindsided or disappointed. Now, all of those things are learned. Again, we're even learning to lie to ourselves to ultimately survive, to protect ourselves, to be in that pattern of defense. And that is one thing the subconscious does so well. It keeps us afloat. It tries to make sure that we are safe. But of course, there are negative consequences of lying, whether it's lying to ourselves or lying to others. There is a really great book. It's called The Truth Heals. And it's by Deborah King. And The Truth Heals is basically a book written by someone who has been also living in a house of lies. On the outside, her life, Deborah's life, was beautiful. It was a great family, happy. Everything seemed just idealistic or ideal. But then she, later on in her life, had to admit that most of what actually had been appearing so perfect on the outside was a lie. Her father was a very nice man. He had a good sense of humor. He was gentle and playful. But he also molested her for years at night when he came to her room and fondled her and did things that were absolutely horrible and inappropriate for this little girl. But he always told her, don't tell anyone, don't tell anyone. And so she learned to lie to protect him and to somehow keep that secret from the world. Her mother was lying because her mother was in denial. She lied to herself. She lied to all those around her by simply pretending it didn't happen, nothing was going on, all was well. And this little girl was lying into her adulthood because she pretended that what had happened either didn't happen or was okay that it happened. And so she suppressed all that inside of her that continuously said, this is wrong, this feels bad, this is something a father shouldn't do, others don't do that. She just suppressed it all for the sake of keeping that structure, this harmony in the household intact. By doing so, she put a lot of pressure and responsibility on her little shoulders, and she damaged herself. And it wasn't until she had physical and emotional problems that basically were a signal that the truth wanted to burst out of her, wanted to be expressed, wanted to be seen, that she finally was able to speak about what happened to her and admit to herself and others that she didn't have this wonderful childhood, but that she was a victim of abuse and that she was damaged and hurt because of it. And in this book are many stories, like stories I have also heard from my clients, that are a testimony of how lying and living in a lie can ultimately lead to an enormous drain of energy, life force, how your health at some point is just no longer sustainable because that internal pressure of holding yourself in that lie and not letting the healing of the truth come forth is getting more and more to you, emotionally and physically. I remember a client of mine who has been in the lie of his sexuality until his late 60s. He knew early on in his life that he was gay, but he couldn't admit it to himself. He couldn't admit it to the world, so he pretended to be, like he said, normal. And he was having girlfriends and in society just playing that role of what he thought he should be, and he wasn't really ever admitting what he really felt inside. And he got ill. His body was shutting down. His emotions were just going onto a level of almost no longer wanting to live because of living in that lie. So in the book, The Truth Heals, it just expresses to you how the truth, that often is depicted as, well, the truth hurts, the truth is hard, people cannot handle the truth. Well, the truth actually is setting you free. The truth is something that can lead to healing and just a realignment of yourself physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So if we don't tell the truth, if we go into that comfort of lying, in this, maybe it's just a short win, an instant gratification of not having to face the truth. Ultimately, we are hurting ourselves more than if we are facing the truth. Now, one of the problems with lying, of course, is that relationships get destroyed. Marriages that were ultimately coming to an end because of a lie. There are many stories of that. You may have relationships with your contractor where you had a, sense of confidence and trust in the man, and then 3 times when he said he did something, he didn't. 3 times when he said he will show up, he didn't. Well, after the 4th time, you just feel, well, I don't trust him anymore. I don't really want to work with him anymore. So lies do destroy connections, do destroy relationships. But another problem with lying that people often don't realize is that lying makes us almost become habitual to it. There's a study that showed in the brain, when we lie, not frequently, but just, once in a while, there's something happening that creates discomfort. It's an interesting phenomenon that the brain is sending out signals of uneasiness when we are lying. But the problem is when we lie more frequently and when we get away with the lying, those signals become less and less, and we become more and more numb to those signals. And so in some ways, we are becoming more habitual and more comfortable in being liars. And I believe that is a dangerous trend. Why? Because when we do lie continuously, and we know that we do, how do we know that others are really telling us the truth? How do we know that there is a truth anymore when all we are really focusing on are lies? And in some ways, that's what's happening also now in our society, where we are told everyone is lying. You cannot trust the news. You cannot trust the people that tell you this is how it is. You cannot trust the internet. You cannot trust the scientists. You cannot trust facts. You cannot trust anything. And when we are told we cannot trust because everything is a lie, and when we know that we are also guilty of lying, eventually we feel that the world is going into the abyss of chaos. And in those moments, it is when someone appears as that savior, the one that says we can make it all better now, the one that says I'm the one who leads you into the truth. This is when we are the most susceptible to people that are power hungry, that are ultimately despots, that just try to take that power from all for their own benefit. Now, I'm not saying that this is exactly what happens right now, but I know in history, and you probably do that too, especially in the history from my upbringing, from my parents in Germany, there are many examples that show that lies are the bridge to chaos, and chaos is the bridge to ultimately the downfall of structure, of order, and also of democracy. So lies are not just something we can take lightly. There are consequences to it. There are consequences on a personal level, and there are consequences on a global level. And, when we go back to the personal level and its consequences, I think one of those consequences is that confidence, that trust in yourself, that feeling of, I know at least that I can see my truth. I know at least that my word counts to myself. And I think that is something that is unfortunately undermined when we are lying. Now, one form of lying that is really, really subtle, but so painful when we are falling into, is the lying of looking at ourselves, where we are not seeing who we are, when we're not seeing our truth. There are people that have a hard time to look into the mirror because they are believing what they would see there is horrible, it's disgusting, it's not really what should be there or what they should be seeing. So they're looking away. There are people that are putting inches of makeup on their beautiful faces because they want to lie about their age. They want to lie about their wrinkles, lie about their experiences that created their wrinkles, lie about the wisdom that is underneath those wrinkles. There are people that are lying about their fears and their weaknesses. Not only lying to others, but also lying to themselves and pushing and forcing themselves to do things that deep inside they know they're not up to. They know they don't like to jump out of a plane and do parachuting. They know they're not up to going in front of a crowd and speaking and being in the spotlight. They know they're not up to going and buying a bigger house and having to work harder and dealing with more debt. They know they don't feel this is the right thing. They know this is not their truth, but they still do it because somehow they are telling themselves, I have to. This is what's expected from me. That's what everyone else is doing. And these form of lyings are ultimately, I believe, the most detrimental to ourselves because they are overriding all those little signals that could lead us to a better connection to ourselves, to a more peaceful, more harmonious, and more fulfilling relationship with ourselves. So when we come back, we will talk about that. How can we overcome the pattern of lying to ourselves and others? What can we do right now, today, to make the truth the most important goal for us, to covet the truth again and live from it, through it, and ultimately be it. We will be right back.